Guten Tag. Hello, welcome
Hey
to
Gates.
this episode of Marketing Guides for Small Business podcast. I'm Ian Cantle, and today I've got Ken Tucker from Changescape Web, Paul Barthel from Changescape Web, Jeff Steck from Tylerica Marketing Systems, and we are going to rock this topic. We're talking about one of the most powerful marketing strategies that a business can use, and that's email marketing. So, did you know that email marketing delivers an average return on investment of $42 for every dollar spent on it? That's an average, but that's a staggering 42,000% ROI, making it one of the most profitable marketing channels you can leverage as a business. Now, email marketing isn't just about sending messages, it's about building relationships through that channel. And 72% of consumers actually prefer email as their primary means of business communication. And personalized emails can improve click through rates by 14% and conversions by 10%. So imagine the impact that on your bottom line as a business that those metrics could actually have on your business. Moreover, if you segment email campaigns, meaning you personalize them to a greater degree for segments within your database, you can even see a whopping 760% increase in revenue. So there's lots and lots of great data behind that. And we're going to unpack a lot of that today. But one of the things that we're all aware of as marketing guides is that many business owners, in fact, we as guides might actually have a predisposition to hating email, which is tragic. We don't hate it because we're marketers. We just hate our inboxes being full, right? But a lot of businesses avoid email marketing for their business because of their own predisposition. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. So guys, we're going to do a round robin today, and each of you can chime in, of course, on the question. But let's start with understanding the basics of email marketing. So my question is, why is email marketing important for small businesses? And we'll start with Paul.
Yeah, we'll address the hating the email thing later in the episode. I have some thoughts on that.
I'm surprised.
But to your question, first, like you mentioned in the intro, it's cost effective, okay? And the other thing is, and we'll address this later too, but you have an email list, and the assumption is that people have opted into this list. So it's not cold outreach, although that is a different topic. But if you have an email list, you're communicating with people that already have some degree of relationship with you. So it's not spam. It's not a cold email. And because of that, it does have a high return on investment. And you're communicating directly with people that you've already done business with or already have a relationship with. Maybe it gives you the opportunity to cross-sell. Maybe you've done a bathroom remodeling project for someone. You can reach out to them and say, hey, we've done a bathroom remodeling project for you. Have you considered remodeling your kitchen? It gives you opportunities to do that you really can't effectively do through other channels. And so with that, I'll hand it off. I don't want to step on anyone's toes, but it's cost effective, has a high ROI, and gives you a direct communication channel and the opportunity to upsell, cross-sell, things like that.
Awesome. How about you, Ken?
So one is reinforcing branding and staying top of mind. So when you're doing email on a regular basis, and you should, again, as Paul mentioned, we're talking about people who have opted into a list, people who are past customers of yours, who've received emails from you, so you want to keep sending email, partly because any email service provider solution that you're using auto cleanses the list when you send on a regular basis, meaning look, the reality is email addresses go bad really, really fast. People change jobs, they change internet service providers or phone companies. And so, you know, because of that, you need to constantly be sending email, or you have to stop what you're doing, which is never going to be a convenient time. Because if you're trying to send an email message out, chances are you're trying to do it with a little bit of sense of urgency to maybe drive some business or whatnot. Well, before you do that, you have to stop and go through and run it through a list cleanser, because if you haven't sent an email out for 3-4 months, you're going to have bad emails. And if you have bad emails, it's going to hurt your deliverability. So when you do send, it may not even be delivered to the people that you are really hoping to get it to. So, you know, that may be kind of jumping ahead into some of the best practices, but sending regular email marketing is just really, really important. You know, daily, no, most businesses probably don't need to do it that frequently, although some might. If you're an e-commerce store, maybe, but maybe only for a specific segment of people who've opted in to get that frequency, right? So you need to understand your customers. You need to understand what they want. Again, it's all about delivering value. You know, email marketing is most effective, I think, when you consistently deliver value. Again, because you're just staying top of mind. You're kind of reminding people in a subtle way, oh yeah, they do this service as well, or they offer these products as well, or, oh, you know what? I've never tried that dish. Maybe I had to go check out this restaurant finally, because this sounds fantastic. I'm hungry. Yeah. So just, you know, I'll leave it at that. I mean, I think it's really important to just keep staying in contact with people. The reason email works better than social media typically is because social media is like a river. And if you're not looking at that spot in the river when it flows by, you're never going to see it again. That analogy isn't 100% accurate, but it's pretty accurate. Mm-hmm. With email marketing, I mean, it goes in somebody's inbox. They may not read it. That's okay. If they don't mark it as spam, which hopefully they don't, because you're working with an opted-in list, or customers who've given you permission to stay in contact with them. You know, it's okay if they don't read it. You're still accomplishing one of your core objectives, and that is visibility and top of mind.
Yeah. Awesome. What about you, Jeff?
Yeah, I think for me, one of the, big promises of email marketing is it's just another way to reach people where they are. And people are going to tell you by whether they join your list, whether they stay subscribed, whether they respond, whether they click on links to your email. They're going to tell you how they interact with you and what that means to them. But if they are people that pay attention to emails, you don't want to lose that opportunity to, stay in touch with them through email. We talk a lot about omni-channel marketing, and it's one of the channels, one of the big channels.
Yeah.
Is it being abused? Yes, we're going to talk about that later, I think, in the best practices and the worst practices, the don'ts. But if your audience pays attention to email, you absolutely want to be leveraging that. And it's applicable to all different businesses. If you're a transactional business, for sure, e-commerce, you can do thank yous, you can ask for reviews, you can do follow-ups, you can do reminders. Hey, you bought a 1-month supply and it's 20 days in, you're probably going to want to order more. You can do all kinds of cool things in email. If you're a relationship-based business, rather than not being in touch with your client base for 3 months, you can have that once a week or twice a month or even once a month newsletter kind of update what's going on in the industry, what's going on in the business, things that people care about. And I think that's one of the things you've got to give people some value in your content and what you push out for email. Like anything, it can't just be all buy our stuff, right?
Yeah.
But whether you're relationship-based, transactional-based, it's a way to meet people where they are and give them something they can use. And then on the marketer side, the business owner side, there's a ton of metrics you can get from it. And we'll talk about that a little more later too. I think, some of them aren't as useful as they used to be, but you still get information about what people are doing. And particularly when you tie into their past behaviors and you start segmenting your lists and being able now to tailor your content, you can conceivably, through the automation platform, send an email that has most of the email the same for everybody, and then maybe a section interspersed that's a little different for each audience. So you can personalize the email a little more. You can tune your content toward what they're doing. I'll give for instance, I maintain the email list for a nonprofit organization, but they are membership based. They do charge for it. And when we pay attention to where people are in their membership cycle, and if their membership has lapsed and we remind them of it, we see re-signups. And it more, again, going back to your ROI that you mentioned, and it more than pays for the email platform just to have those recaptures of lapsed memberships. So yeah, there's a lot going on in terms of where you meet people, how you use it, what you tell them, and yeah, do it right. But when done right, it can have those ROIs and those huge benefits for not a ton of effort. I mean, when you set up automations and flows, boom, 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 a series of 5 or 10 emails goes out just by virtue of somebody taking an action. That's huge efficiency, right? I think there's a lot of good stuff going on with email, and don't count it out. It's not dead.
Yeah. Ian, I know you've talked about some scenarios for some of your clients, where email marketing is fantastic. So I'll let you do that here in just a second. The key is that if you need to step on the gas pedal and you've got a list and you're maintaining a list and it's a quality list, email marketing is the best way to step on that gas pedal and get business for your, and generate revenue for your business.
Yeah. I think just to add to that, I think the biggest key to all of this of making, email marketing work is to be a welcome guest, not an uninvited pest, right? So, a lot of us hate email because they're uninvited pests to us. Like maybe we filled in a form somewhere, maybe we didn't. Like we all get unsolicited spam emails. But for clients where they've built up their list over time, I'm always amazed. So just using the dental practices as an example, and even like windows and doors companies, I'm always amazed because as a marketer, you're putting best practices in place for your clients, and essentially every time you do that, it's confirmation of whether those best practices still work, whether you need to modify them. The feedback mechanism is always there. And I'm always amazed where we send out an email newsletter for dentists, for windows and doors companies, and we immediately see form fills or phone calls coming in. That always amazes me because it's like everybody knows they have to go back to the dentist. It's not like, my 6 months is up or whatever, right? We all know that. But until you get that reminder, that top of mind reminder, you don't take action sometimes. And so email marketing can be a tremendous action instigator, right? Like it can really move people to action. Which is, I think as a marketer, it still surprises me sometimes.
Yeah.
And Jeff touched on the whole automation and segmentation and different ways to do that, but you have to be using a real CRM, not some kind of project management software that has a so-called CRM slapped on top of it. You have to be using a real CRM platform to do a lot of those things.
Yeah, I mean, or you need a good CRM that can prompt like if you have salespeople, right? Relationship managers, it scores people according to their actions, and then they can reach out, right? It depends on the if it's an automated touch or a real person touch. But without that CRM, you don't have the systems in order to prompt you to do that or to automatically do that for sure.
Yeah.
It was alluded to that the list is really, really vital to the success of any email campaign. So let's talk about building your email list. What are the best practices for building an email list? And we'll start with Jeff.
Yeah, I think, the obvious one, the one that most people think of is a sign-up form on your website. Most people aren't going to just give you their email address just because, right? You need to give them a reason. And that means you have to offer something, some kind of incentive. The offer may be just join our list. I'm going to say say subscribe to my newsletter because I get enough newsletters, right? But whatever you call it, it's give me your email address and I'm going to give you something of value. And it may be a one-time thing. It may be a checklist. It may be an ebook. It may be a discount coupon, whatever that one-time thing is. You need to offer something. And it could be the value of the ongoing thing you're subscribing to as well. But you got to give people a reason. Don't just say, please give me your email. But the website sign-up form is a good one. asking people for it in scenarios where it makes sense. Home service businesses. We worked a program with a home service-based company where we wanted to gather emails so that we could, do follow-up appointment, mentions and things like that. And about a third of the time we could get email addresses. And as soon as we started asking for them and saying, we're going to send you information and a picture of the person who's going to be knocking on your door, guess what? We doubled the email sign up. So
Wow.
we went from 1/3 to 2/3. So think about how you're asking people. You can ask them on the phone when they're making an appointment because you want to send follow-up information. You want to send that comfort level of who's going to be visiting you. You can ask for it on the website and make sure you're offering something of value. You can, through a social media promotion, drive people to a web form or even directly through a lead form through social media where you're getting their email address. But again, you got to be thinking about what you're giving people, asking them to either give up their email address. What are you giving them in return for that ask? And then if you're doing any events or webinars, ask for it there. Of course, that's a natural sign up. You can't get the Zoom link unless you send me your email address, right? So there's a lot of ways to get it. But the key I go back to is make sure whatever you're offering has value because people don't want to just be on another list just because.
Yeah, great points, Jeff. And value exchange is truly what makes all of this work. If I promise you value, people are more likely to give me their name and their email, right? And why don't we move on to who's next on the list? Paul.
Yeah, just a couple things you can. One thing you can do is offer exclusive content that they can only get if they give you their email address. There's some debate on this one. I hate them, but there's data that says it works. But the pop-ups, on exit or when you scroll to a certain point on the website, or after a certain amount of time, you get a pop-up sign up for your newsletter or for sign up for whatever. They irritate me, but like I said, there's data that says they work, so don't discount them, I suppose.
Don't go by what irritates Paul.
Hey, data
Don't
says they
irritate
work.
Paul.
They don't work for me, but there's data that says they work. So, no, those are just a couple of things. If you're having an offline, a trade show, you can have some kind of promotion there where you can collect email addresses. So I don't know. Those are just a few things that come to mind for me. I'm sure Ken has more.
Yeah. Why don't you pop in, Ken?
All right. Well, the first thing I want to mention is I think that it's super important for you to try to get as many of your followers from social media to become members of your list, because you guys have probably all seen it or heard horror stories about somebody's page getting shut down, or whatnot. And so you don't own the social media properties, but you can own your list. Now, you may not own it in the tool, because again, if you're an abuser of sending spammy emails, your email service provider is going to shut you down and you can't use that tool, but you can still own and control your list. You can keep that in an Excel spreadsheet or whatever as a backup copy. So I think it's important for people to realize you need to move them onto a platform that you own and control. You don't do that with social media. Mm-hmm. So it's all about value, right? I mean, there's a transactional value that has been associated with an email address that it's at least generally $25 or more before somebody's willing to give you their email address. They have to have that perceived value. So if you're going to just go with unfortunately, this is the most common way for people to ask for email addresses, sign up for our newsletter on their homepage of their website. If you don't give people a reason why they should sign up, they're not going to sign up. Why would they? I mean, especially in the world we live in where there's so much spam and many of the spam messages that you get, or even legitimate messages you get sometimes, are dangerous because they have they're phishing emails, or they have links to websites that that are not pristine and cause all kinds of potential dangers. So if you're going to ask for subscribe, give 5 or 6 reasons why it's valuable for somebody to do so. Also, I think one of the best practices that because it is kind of very related, I think, is when you do get somebody to subscribe, first email should be tell them what to expect. I think that's really important, and it's easy to miss that one. But tell them what to expect, the frequency, again, reiterate what's going to be included just to confirm, they want to be on your list. You want them to unsubscribe if they don't want to be on your list, not mark it as spam and take the easy way out. That hurts you. Unsubscribe is actually the healthy way to do it, even though, and get over it. Don't let it bruise your ego. It's the best thing that you could have people do if they don't want your email. So when you're thinking about transactional value, you've got to think about, what can I give somebody that's worth that initial price for giving up their email address? Some things work really, really well. I mean, getting people to sign up and watch webinars. We talked about live events. Offline, have a QR code that somebody can scan that takes them, right to an opt-in form, and give them again, on your QR code, you've got to have a description of what is somebody going to get when they scan the QR code if they're joining your list or, taking advantage of your offer. You've got to, and you need to think about offers that are good for your customers, but also are good for your business. So you don't want to give away the farm. You don't want to give away something that costs you $50 or $100 every time. If you want to give somebody something that has a perceived value of $50 or $100. It could be your intellectual capital, which is common in a lead magnet. Writing an ebook, a checklist, a case study, something like that. But the great thing is, you write it. You make the investment to write it once, but then it can be an asset that's reused over and over and over again. So it may cost you probably will cost you well more than $50 initially to create it that first time. But if it's an asset that is going to be the lure of getting people to sign up for your email, it's well worth it.
Yeah, great points.
And I thought of a couple of quick things to add while you were talking. One is when you talk about perceived value, it doesn't have to be the value of what you're giving. It can be the value of what you're giving brings. For instance, the checklist itself may not be worth $50, but if the checklist lets you save $1,000 by giving you some information, that's a great trade. Yeah. The other thing I wanted to mention is, especially talking about building the list, is the notion that less is more. So when you ask for the information and get people on the list, I always say, look, email address and name, maybe even just first name. If you start asking for people for address and phone number and how many pets they have, and they're just going to say, forget this, right? You can ask for that later. You can do that incrementally over time and build a profile. And then the third quick tip is, if you're in e-commerce, take a look and see if there's a way in your e-commerce, you're going to get email information for checkout, for sending receipts and all, notifications about shipments and all that. But see if there's a little box that you can have them check that will be the opt-in for other information. You may not want to call it marketing email, because who wants marketing email? You want to say, additional information, whatever. Let them opt in on their checkout as well.
Yeah, something like product and offer updates.
Yeah.
Special offers. Those are great points. And I love it that you brought up the notion of just what you ask for to build that list, right? And often the size of your form that you're asking people to fill in often directly relates to the value exchange you're creating, right? So, for example, if you're at a trade show, you're offering a contest for people to enter their information in order to potentially win something. Depending on the size of the prize, right? People are more willing to give information. We were recently at a dental trade show. We were asking for pretty simple information: name, phone. We did ask for mobile phone, email. We asked for their practice name, and we asked what their greatest marketing challenge was, right? Because the prizes we were giving out were pretty appealing to people. But even that was kind of pushing the limits from from my perspective when we did that. And what I would say too is have somebody who's not directly related to your business actually fill in your forms. It was fascinating at the trade show because we pulled it together as a team. But then people were filling it in on their mobile phone right in front of us. And for most people, super easy. There was a couple of people where they really struggled, right? So it was an interesting discussion point just to learn from people's actual experience about filling in the forms. I was also going to just mention, depending where you're located in the world, you have to be knowledgeable to some degree, or the marketers that you're using have to be knowledgeable about the regulations, the email regulations like CAN-SPAM, like CASL. There's all these rules depending on the country you're in, maybe even sometimes the state or province, that you as a business absolutely need to be aware of, because if you send emails to people and they haven't opted in or double opted in or consented, you can actually be fined, and the fines keep getting bigger and bigger. So something to be aware of, but not to shy away from email marketing. Just do it properly.
Do it right.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. So we understand how we're going to get our list together. We have some ideas. Now let's look at how we go about crafting effective email campaigns. So how can a small business create effective email campaigns? And we'll start with Ken.
Yeah, well, the first thing I want to say is ask people to do something in your emails. Just a simple reply yes, and ask them a question, or no, but get them to reply, because that reply is huge. As of the beginning of the year, roughly, it's become even more important, because if people are replying to your email messages, it's going to help you with your delivery rates. So, a lot of people aren't doing this, and it's a real missed opportunity. So some of your emails should be designed, where you literally all you want people to do is, let me know which of the three options are most appealing to you, and reply with the number, and then they reply, and boom, you're helping with your email delivery rates overall. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that you identify what it is you're trying to accomplish. And look at those goals and objectives that you're working on. As Jeff mentioned, there are transactional emails, there are monthly newsletter emails. I mean, there's a whole host of different types of emails. Some are literally just notifications and reminders. Hey, your product is about to be delivered. Remember, you've got this appointment at this time. Here's the address, things like that. But then you also have the informational. And then you also have, the emails that are provided to people that, that are designed to nurture them and move them through, their buyer's journey, or their sales funnel. And so you want to definitely think about what is the purpose of each and every email that you're sending. When you send an email series that's designed to nurture, I think this is, one of the best ways to make emails really work is, people may be ambitious and say, yeah, I want to sign up and I want to watch that webinar or this or that. But at the end of the day, give them an easy button. It's like, don't ever forget to include, and oh, by the way, if you'd rather just have a 15-minute conversation to kind of hit the highlights of what we're going to be talking about, schedule your appointment now. Because really, your goal is to try to have some interaction and some conversation, typically with your client, customer, or patient. But again, it has to be aligned with what you're trying to accomplish, right? So subject lines are super important. You need to be aware of what words are going to trigger spam complaints, and keep your emails from being delivered. We talked about free is not okay in an email subject line. But to have free listed on a Google ad for like a free consultation, that's perfectly fine and acceptable. So you got to understand, what there is there. I know HubSpot's always done a great job of maintaining a list of spam kind of keyword or spam kind of words that will trigger, delivery problems for your emails. So, so just do a Google search and look for, spam email words and avoid those. Personalization, Jeff mentioned that you want to ask for minimal information. I think it's always the best practice to ask for first name, because you do want to try to personalize your emails as much as possible. If it's a newsletter, you're not going to necessarily personalize it, but anything that has transactional value or a nurture email, you definitely want to personalize those. Absolutely 100%. Personalization doesn't necessarily mean just addressing people by their first name, though. It could be they get different content based on what their interests are. So you've got platforms that will allow you to dynamically feed and build an email campaign based specifically on what you know about that that particular contact. So I think that's about enough for me.
Those are all great points, Ken. There's so much we can go into, and I'm really curious to hear what Jeff has to say about this.
Yeah, just continuing on that personalization line. Yeah, that is also important. I absolutely agree. It's more than just the first name. And I'll give an example. Let's say you meet somebody at a trade show, you get them into your email system, and then the follow-up, 6 months later, maybe you want to send them a message about your new product launch or something. If you say, "Hi, Ken, it was good to meet you at the trade show earlier this year, and we talked about your business and how you might be interested in this," versus if you said, "Hi, Ken, it was good to meet you at the Business Expo in Austin last year, and we talked about your plumbing repair business and how, that's so important." And it makes that connection, right? It's all about making the connection with people and building rapport and relationship. So personalization, yeah, it's a lot more than just first name. There's so much you can do with it. And that relies on, going back to what Paul said, having a serious, CRM based system that lets you have all the tagging and all the fields that you can carry on to do the personalization. Once you have that, the content itself needs to be engaging. And a lot of people struggle with writing content and they don't want to write content, but especially with AI coming on and engaging with people that do like to write content, there's a lot of ways to get content done. It needs to be engaging. It needs to be long enough, but not too long. And that's how you're going to hold interest. You're going to hold their interest from email to email, and they're not going to unsubscribe because, hey, if this was worth a 2-minute read, I'll read it again next time. So you got to provide some value and make it compelling. And then, like Ken said, ask them to take an action. Marketing is about finding your ideal client audience, telling them something about what you do that's better and different from what everyone else does. And then the part that gets overlooked so often, getting people to take action, because otherwise you're telling stories, and stories are great, but action is what puts money in your bank account. So have those strong calls to action, give them, something to do and a next step. It doesn't have to be buy our stuff right now. It may just move them further down the funnel. But always, give some people to do and lead them along. And again, as Ken said, that's also how you can get some more metrics, get some more tracking. Just an open rate doesn't really mean anything anymore. I think we're going to talk about that later. But the clicks, the follow-ups, the replies, that means something, and those come from your calls to action.
Awesome. Great points, Jeff. What about you, Paul?
What about me? What'd I do?
It's what you didn't do.
Well, one thing, I'm going to touch on something here. One thing is compelling.
I'm worried.
Compelling subject lines. Now, I'm not a content writer. Maybe a content writer can explain exactly what that means, how you do that, what that is. But apparently that's something you're supposed to do. But we've talked about engaging content. This shouldn't have to be said, but mobile optimization. Make sure your stuff works on mobile devices. Because
isn't mouse type. I see that all the time. Like, you get emails and you can't read them because they're too small.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I think that's but yeah, like I said, that shouldn't have to be said, but yet you see it all the time. A/B testing, test, and I'm not going to go into how to do this, but test different subject lines, different call to actions. A/B testing is always important. Visual appeal, there's some debate on this as to whether you should deliver text only emails or HTML emails, because text emails have better deliverability, but from an end user standpoint, a lot of people tend to prefer the HTML emails where you have the different visuals and graphics and things like that. And you talked about compliance, probably talk about that a little bit more later, but the content, and we've touched on this too, the content has to be valuable to the end user. And Jeff was talking about different ways to personalize your emails, and that goes back, you have to have a real CRM to do that. So those are all important things that if you're going to have an effective email campaign, you need to have these things. These are all things that need to be considered and built into the campaign. And we talked about objectives and segmentation, and it's important because go back to the remodeling example. If you did a bathroom remodeling project and you send a email out to someone about doing a bathroom remodeling project that you've already done a bathroom remodeling project for, you're probably just going to irritate them. And that's why segmentation is so important.
Yeah.
Paul, you hit on a bunch of good things. And I think the follow-up point I would make is pretty much everything you hit on can be done very easily in a serious system. But if you're just trying to use your Outlook or your Gmail and send to everyone on a blind copy, you're not going to get, A/B testing. You're not going to get mobile optimization, previews, spam checks, all that stuff. You got to be using serious systems. And if you are sending stuff to a whole bunch of people and putting them on blind copy, that's killing your deliverability, by the way. So get on a serious system that's CRM based.
Yeah.
And you should not be doing email marketing from Outlook or Gmail or whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yep. Yeah. I just want to reiterate. So we are so focused on strategy first as consultants that sometimes we forget to remind people, like, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. You have to have a plan for your email campaigns. Like, yes, you could just throw something out there, but without a plan, like you're being foolhardy, right? Which leads into, I think a couple times you guys have referenced the buyer's journey, but email can be so powerful in almost every single step of the buyer's journey of know, like, trust, try, buy, repeat, and refer. In virtually every one of those stages, you can use email. Now, at the top, the know stage, the only way you can really use email is some connection with ads or buying a list, cold outreach, which, of course, we've talked about before. There's lots of challenges with cold outreach. You have to be super, super careful. You don't want to tarnish your domain, but it can still be very powerful. One of the things that you mentioned, Paul, where you were talking about HTML versus text emails, I think that's really, really important for you to consider in your plan as well. We've done some interesting testing because we were monitoring a service provider for one of our clients that was doing cold outreach programs. And one of the programs they were doing was very almost like SMS text-like messages through email, where they would send out a more detailed email to start to, offer something. But if somebody showed some interest, but then they didn't respond, the next email was like the simplest little, it looked like it was from a real person. It wasn't, it was automated, but it was just like, hey, John, are you still interested? Right. And it was interesting to observe how in the right place in the marketing hourglass or the sales funnel, that can be really, really effective. So you do need to think about, like, do I go branded? Do I go unbranded? Do I go simple text? Do I go HTML? I wouldn't say over engineer it, and don't, again, get yourself stuck by thinking through this. Do it and then learn from it. That's the key.
If you're doing cold outreach, you should probably almost always be doing the text-based emails.
Yeah.
On cold outreach.
In a separate domain.
Absolutely.
Well, that's later in what you don't do. section here.
Yeah, and I want to motor through these questions because I think that's going to be one of the most fun for us to share, and also one of the most powerful, because being in the business, we're doing this every day in and out. We observe mistakes that people are making when we take on their accounts and all sorts of things. So I want to get to that for sure. So before we do, though, let's talk automation. You guys have broached this topic a few times through this, but what are the benefits of using email marketing automations? And we'll start with Paul.
Well, I would start by saying automation in general, not just with email, and that's a whole other topic, but automation in general can benefit your business in so many ways. But it's efficient. It saves time, it saves money, it saves resources, because you don't have to have someone manually doing these things. And if you have an email automation, it's consistent. So you have efficiency and you have consistency, and if, again, going back to using a real CRM, you can personalize these emails through automation. You can pull in, we're all familiar, have different terms for it, but merge tags is a common term. I think everyone knows what that is, but different CRMs use different terminology. But yeah, it helps you personalize, and you can build, lead nurture automations, and there's just so much you can do with automation. And I don't want to, I know we're already coming up on 45 minutes, so I'll hand it off to I guess Ken.
Before we do, I meant to include this when we were talking about list building, but because you were talking about merge tags, Paul, it's really important for our listeners to know and to understand that list hygiene is absolutely important and vital. And because you were talking about merge tags, it made me chuckle inside, because there's been times where, especially when I've worked corporately and our lists were thousands and thousands and thousands of people, we would do list cleansing activities. And there were common things you'd look for, like Mickey Mouse and, all these crazy things that people enter into forms, and bad stuff. But the funny thing is and it's not really funny for small businesses where it's very personal, is that if you don't do list cleansing, you're sending out stupid emails, right? Especially when you use personalization, because if somebody puts in something stupid, it's going to show up as stupid, right? So, Mickey Mouse. Hi, Mickey Mouse. How are you? So just be careful with that.
Hey, Mickey, I'm glad you're interested in learning more about our services.
But they're gonna get that email. So you're the one that filled it out like that.
Yep. So I'm a huge fan. This is kind of bordering on best practice, but it's also list building, and it ties directly into automation. It's, if you're going to ask somebody for an email address to download an asset, sign up for a webinar, something like that, signing up for a webinar, they probably are going to give you a real email address, because they're interested in that. But because that's the only way they're going to get the content, unless it's a recorded. If it's a recording that you're going to send them to, then they still would need to. Anyway, if they can give you a bogus email address when they download an ebook or a checklist, hoping that you just automatically fire off a link with an attachment. Here's your ebook, or here's the web page. Go click on it, and you can download it from this page. No, you don't want to do that. You want to keep people giving you real email addresses, and the only way that they're going to be able to get that response back from you is you send a response back with to their email on how to go get the ebook. You don't just automatically, upon form submission, take them to the page where they click the download button and get the asset, because they're going to give you a bogus email address, a pretty healthy percentage of the time, and that just crops up your list. So you don't want to do that. I like to be pragmatic when it comes to using images or not, based on the type of email you're sending. If it's a newsletter, I think those are usually designed to be a little bit more elegant, have more visual appeal. But if somebody downloads an ebook and then you drop them into a 5 to 7 email nurture series, for example, Most of the time I would, because they already got the branded asset that you wanted, they were already on your website. They already took that action. So you don't need to work as hard to brand yourself visually to those people. Your delivery rate's going to be better. It's just better overall, I think, to keep most of those text-based. But if you need, like, one of the things that I like to follow, a kind of a rhythm of when people download an asset, we have an email that talks about overcoming an objection. What's a common objection they might have? A customer testimonial, how we're different, maybe an example of, what life is like for somebody before and after. So if it's a home remodeler, then, before and after means you probably ought to have pictures or a link out to a video that they can go watch. And a link out to a video, you can't embed a video in an email, but you can have a thumbnail, where people and a play button where people click on it, and then it kicks them out and takes them to the place where the video is actually hosted on some web property. But it's still a visual. So in that whole series, you may only need one or two of those emails to have visual content. Everything else could be text-based, and you'd be just fine. And I think that that's kind of the approach I generally like to take when we're putting together those email nurture campaigns after somebody, downloads a lead magnet, which is one of the predominant, types of automations that I think most people probably think of. The other thing is, offers, we've talked about this before, but crafting the offer is critical. Don't give a discount on something that's so freaking obscure that nobody cares about. But it's like, oh, but I offered this discount, nobody took any action. Well, of course they didn't, because who wants that kind of a pizza? Mustard and, I don't know, who knows what else, but mustard and banana pizza,
And pickles.
And well, some people actually like pickles on a pizza. There are hamburger pizzas that actually are successful, but I don't know too many people that would order mustard and banana pizza. But you're doing it. You want people to take action. Otherwise, you're wasting their time and your time. Give them an offer, and that's going to motivate them to take action, which at the end of the day, you hope equates to a strong revenue boost, right? So just think about that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. And what about you, Jeff? Automation.
I love automations and workflows. I can nerd out on that all day long, but then my first degree was in computer science. So I think from a business owner point of view, it allows you, as Paul said, to be very efficient and consistent with what you're doing and pushing content out there. But more importantly, you can adapt based on how people interact with it. So if they click on a link, you can take them a completely different direction in the next email by shifting where they are in the workflow or which automation branch they're in. I think that's huge. You can do lead scoring. Every time somebody opens the email, clicks on a link, visits a web page, because of it, you can build a score. Again, you got to be in a CRM-based system to do that. But you can start building more information about people and what their interests are and what direction they go, how they engage with your content. And when you're in that CRM, you can also bring people, and this is the other important aspect. It's not all about automation. It's not all about, just having emails. It's about bringing in other aspects of the omnichannel, informing other aspects of the omnichannel, sending a text. If somebody doesn't open an email for a long time, send them a text and say, hey, we noticed you haven't been reading our email. Is there a problem with deliverability? If they look for a product on your website 5 times in 3 days, send a note to the sales guy that said, hey, this particular customer seems to have a keen interest in this product. You might want to give them a call. There's just a lot of cool things that you can do with the automation. And then you can track it and get analytics from it as well. And that will help inform, your future efforts. So big fan of automation. Love writing automation.
Awesome. Yeah, I would just add 2 things to that. I would say, one, never lose sight that it must be customer centric. It's not about the automation. It's not about the time you save. It's all about, am I looking at the relationship I'm trying to build with people? because that's the whole point of it. It's trying to make efficiencies there and actually make you smarter as a business and as an organization. But if you lose sight of that, that's a big problem. The other thing I would say is keep automation simple. Having been a recovering over engineering person when it comes to automations, especially with, in the corporate world where we got really, we built these monster machines. Keep it simple. Keep it simple. Do not over engineer these things.
I'll also add, keep it authentic. And the example I use for that is if somebody signs up for your emails at 2:00 on a Sunday morning, they just got back from the bar and they're surfing whatever, right? You don't want to send them 5 days later an email at 2:00 in the morning. It says, "Hey, I was just sitting at my computer and I thought, you got to take advantage of the automations to kind of shift things into business hours and make sure that it's appearing authentic because it needs to be authentic." So
in the appropriate time zone.
Match up what you're saying with when you're saying it. Maybe the automations will let you skip over weekends. It'll let you skip outside of business hours. You can do all those kind of things and still be automated.
Yeah.
And that can actually be a little tricky because there are people that work third shift.
Yeah.
So they may very well, 3:00 in the morning, that's the middle of the day for them.
I mean, they will interact on their terms, right? But
if that's your target audience,
if you send an email back that appears, I was just drinking my morning coffee and it shows up to them at 1:00 in the morning, it's like, were they really?
Yeah. I'd like to add one more thing too, and that is, this is going to fly in the face of most people say as a best practice, but people do this all the time who are extremely effective in email marketing, and that is they send an email to somebody who's already opted in to take the action. Again, a very similar or the same email, and they get, because again, if you're delivering value, you're not going to unsubscribe. If you sign up to watch a webinar on the first email you get 5 days out, most smart marketers are going to do 5 day, 3 day, 1 day, and then a reminder the day of, or something like that, or something similar. Maybe not quite that number of volume, but if I sign up day 1, I'm still going to get the emails from them day 3, day 5, and the day before, because you know what? Again, even though I said earlier that email is better than social media because social media is a river, email is still kind of a river because of the volume of emails that you get. So it just, to improve your overall opt-in rates or your action rates where people are taking the action that you want them to, sending an email to people who've already opted in to take that action is not the worst thing. As a matter of fact, I think it's actually a best practice that most people would say is not a best practice.
And I would modify that. I would just say, switch them into a different category and send them reminders of what they're going to get out of that webinar, right?
You don't even have to do that, but you don't even have to do that.
But I think that works even better. I think most people that are doing best practices, because it actually shows that you understood the action they took. It's being more authentic, right? Anyway, I don't think either of us have statistics to back this at the moment. So let's move on, because we don't want to run out of time for this, which is our favorite topic. So are you good with that, Ken? I
am. I will agree to disagree with you though.
Good. Me too. So I think we've covered. We can have an offline discussion about this. I think we've covered a bunch of things that we best practices. We've also hinted at some mistakes we've seen, but let's talk about mistakes we've seen that we think people should be avoiding. I think this is really, really important because this can save you guys, our listeners, small businesses, tons of time, energy, and money. Just this part alone in this discussion. So what are some common mistakes to avoid in email marketing? And we'll start with you, Ken.
Yeah, well, I think the biggest thing is sending mass emails out to people who have not opted into your list is the biggest single mistake. You are so risking your business when you do that. Cold email is a completely different animal than what we're talking about. We are talking about specifically email marketing designed for people who have opted in and given you permission, or that you've already emailed and communicated with in the past. If you're grabbing a list or buying a list, scraping a list, you're asking for trouble if you're sending it from your own domain. So do not do that. Cold email is a different animal. That's what we consider cold email, because these people have no idea who you are. They've never engaged with your business. Super, super dangerous.
Please blacklist my domain. Thank you.
Yeah. You're basically asking people to help you get blacklisted, which is also going to improve or going to have an impact on how visible your website is in search, as well as what your email delivery is going to be. So, which if you're blacklisted, it's going to be 0. So stay away from that. I hate it when people use clickbaity subject lines. The clickbait is sexy, it's appealing, it sounds really cool. But as Jeff said, you want to be authentic. You want to get people to, read your email because the subject resonates with them. And you know what? If you're doing a good job of writing emails like an email newsletter, and your featured article subject line is frequently maybe about the subject, about your featured article or your featured point. If that's not relevant to people, it's okay. They may not ever read that email. They may just delete it. But if you're adding value, even every 1 out of 10 or 20 emails, and you're not abusing it where you're sending them 50 emails a day, which is another problem. Then people are probably going to stay subscribed, and we'll open up some, 1 or 2 of those emails over the course of a few weeks or months to get the value that they want to get from what you're offering. I do it all the time. I sign up for a lot of newsletters. I delete 80% of what comes into my inbox. I don't have time to deal with it. Subject line doesn't address a problem I'm having, or it doesn't address a critical problem I'm having here and now. Just be aware of that stuff.
Awesome. And Jeff, I know we skipped over a question about metrics. So if anybody wants to work in metrics, because that can potentially lead to mistakes, not paying attention to them. But Jeff, over to you. Biggest mistakes.
Yeah, I'll hit it. Metrics just really quickly is the email systems. Again, another reason to use a CRM-based serious email system is they give you a lot of information. It's changed. Open rates don't really mean as much anymore as they used to, because guess what? Apple opens your email to check for viruses or to have speed, when you want to read it. But giving people an action, you need to do that. We talked about that. I think that's a pitfall, is just sending out an email thinking people want to hang on your every word and not leveraging, giving them information they want and asking them to do something with it is a pitfall. I think on the technical side, I've seen email systems that people have set up. They're not even on the approved sender list for their domain. There's some technical settings that need to be made, and then they wonder why their deliverability isn't there. So you need to have a little bit of work on the technical side. And big pet peeve of mine: don't be sending, even in an above board CRM-based system, don't be using a Gmail address, a Yahoo address, a Hotmail address. Here's what I tell people: if you don't care enough to use a branded email domain and spend maybe $100 a year to be able to do that, you're not serious about your business, and I'm not even going to read your email. If I see something coming in, they want my attention, it's on a Gmail, a Hotmail, or whatever, it's a business, sending to me, it's an automatic delete. Don't make that mistake. And then just make sure your content is geared to your audience. Give people what they want and take advantage of the personalization capabilities, and do it right. Be authentic about it. We talked about that a minute ago, and it seemed like a couple of years ago, there was like about a 3-month interval where everyone was sending out an email and then they were sending out another one a half hour later. Oh, I forgot the link.
Yeah.
Everybody doesn't all of a sudden do that. Somebody was coaching that, right? And that's just automatic, just disingenuous. So be authentic, give people what they want, and pay attention to the details.
Awesome. What about you, Paul?
Yeah, you could write a novel off on what people shouldn't do with email. But Jeff was talking about sending from a free email address. Well, a lot of CRMs, at least the one they won't even let you do that.
Mm-hmm.
So, and again, it's I think a Google Workspace account costs you like $6 a month for an email address. I mean, seriously, okay, and you're too cheap to pay for that. Oh, by the way, Apple and Google aren't opening your email to scan for viruses. They're opening your email to collect data.
Speed. And
that's why they're reading your emails.
Actually, I think it's Microsoft that does the virus scanning and collect data on you.
Actually, they all actually do scan for viruses, but they're really opening your emails to collect data on you. But even to this day, if I get an email without an unsubscribe link, you're automatically marked as spam. And I can't believe this day and age that people are still sending out emails without an unsubscribe link. I mean, you're just asking to get marked as spam.
Yeah.
So I guess those are the biggest things. I know we're over an hour here, but those are kind of the biggest things that, and ignoring feedback, couple of things here. First of all, ask people what kind of content they want. If you have different types of content, ask people what kind of content they send out a survey. Ask people what kind of content they want. And if you have multiple newsletters, and some businesses do, if someone subscribes to one newsletter, that does not mean they automatically want to be subscribed to your 7,000 other newsletters. You're going to get marked as spam. Don't do that, But it happens all the time. So, like I said, we're over an hour. I could go on. I could write a novel on this, but I'll leave it at that.
Sure. Yeah, and I'll just add a few quick things. Mistakes we've seen that people could easily avoid is if you're doing automation and you're using merge fields, make sure that the merge fields work correctly. Test your emails, send it to your own people. Because I've gotten many where somebody has used ChatGPT, or they've gotten a template from somewhere and it's got like merge field here or first name, but it's actually not the actual real merge field, right? And then also
merge field name.
Exactly. And then also have a default. Like what happens if it doesn't actually have something to populate the field with? And then the two other things I've mentioned already, but I think they're so vital. Have a plan. Use metrics to guide, how to, what's happening with it. Is it being effective? And don't forget to be client-centric. I think if you keep, use all the tips that you've heard from these guys today, because we've covered some key statistics about email marketing, why it's valuable. We've talked about how to build your list, some best practices there, best practices for how to create great campaigns. We've talked about automation and workflows and and we've broached the idea of how to measure success and what mistakes to avoid. So I think I think we've run out of time, guys. I didn't think it would go this long, but this is a really important topic, and I'm so appreciative. And I think our listeners are of all that you guys have fed into this. So thank you. I encourage our listeners to share, to subscribe, to rate us on the podcast platforms. And also, if you need help with your email marketing or any type of marketing, please reach out to one of your marketing guides here. All of us offer free consultations or free discovery calls where we can, help you as best as we can, even over a phone call. And until next week, folks, keep calm and market on.
Thanks, everyone.